Welcome to the free audio rendering of Not Without Scars 2. Such an insightful and impactful work must be accessible to the countless number of people living similar life experiences. Becoming a best-selling author pales in comparison to creating a tool capable of instilling hope in the multitude of people trapped in the valley of decision. My greatest profit comes in helping others emerge victorious over their life struggle. My goal is to encourage individuals to follow their dream. My message: you must never quit on your faith, pursuing your aspiration or vision. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Take a moment, invite your family, friends, and acquaintances and enemies to listen to this work chapter by chapter. It is free to listen as well as free to subscribe. Peace, love, and phenomenal blessing.
How do I write my life story? I know hurt and pain. I don't like either one, whether physical or emotional. Herein contains my story, Not Without Scars, Part 2. Optimism, perseverance, persistence, resilience. 2 decades of personal struggle. Optimism. I faced the new millennium with hopefulness. Perseverance. My ego, my humble beginnings, my desire to achieve never allow me to turn away from a difficult task. Persistence. Opposition should be anticipated as an effective strategy to victory surfaces. Resilience. Difficulties do not automatically spell termination. Scars reveal my imperfection as reminders of past episodes of pain, sorrow, or triumph. Scars can tell beautiful story endings or relay misery that wishes to remain anonymous. This work is meant to help others who have experienced decades of struggle. When struggles appear to never end, you must get through the night and face the challenge of a new dawn with fresh hope.
Chapter 3, The Play, Not Without Scars. Introduction. The play version of Not Without Scars was the second part of the trilogy that resonated in my spirit. I clearly heard in my spirit and felt in my soul: book, play, and movie. The second step was another year process. Beyond the 2 years invested in bringing the book to fruition, a Cincinnati playwright, Liz Presley Field, co-authored the adaptation of the book into a play. The play ran for two weeks for 2 consecutive years. The production cast became known as the MCO Players. This community theater group produced several healthcare videos. Opening my life to give the world an in-depth visual look into my past posed quite a different perspective than one on the written pages. The stage version created more of an illusionary depiction. Sensitivity in some areas visualized as a different shade of a young man getting a real-life education in Harlem, the Bronx, and Brooklyn. The residential tripartite schooled this country boy on episodes of real people living and sharing experiences from every possible angle of life. Discoveries of how people lived and survived came together, or drifted apart, were always composed of the simple approach to life and the complex outcome. Love stories rarely shared what was hidden, while hatred never revealed the hurt buried in the heart. I got my first glimpse into what shacking meant as opposed to marriage. The blended family consisted of parents, children, multiple mothers, multiple fathers, adopted as well as foster arrivals and cousins from down south. The play added to my rising profile, not merely the honesty of sharing my life in various versions. The significance raised the crescendo of living in the moment, being a part of the community fabric. My real life experiences were told, lived, and shared on a daily basis. It was not an onlooker's perspective, but current events helping to shape lives. My past was not only a generational review, but an emotional, inspirational, and transformational moment. By nature, a magical happening occurred for many residents of the Mars Black Housing Project. They witnessed my bringing Tyrone Hill, Bobby Serra, and several other members of the Cleveland Cavaliers into a housing project to pass out turkeys at Thanksgiving. That was a highlight, but they had witnessed my presence as a tutor during after-school programs. I made my life the ordinary version of a man you could see often by simply being available. As part of a grant that I received from the Church of God, Findlay, Ohio, I conducted an inner city outreach ministry. When food was needed other than on a holiday, I conducted a Bible study that provided spiritual food. At the conclusion of the session, everyone received a portion of food for a week, 21 meals. A stage play with all its necessary illusions to convey a theme to an audience could never capture the realness of life shared with others and basking in the joy others embrace. One program gave young boys in a summer program an opportunity to shadow a number of corporate executives as well as earn money by completing assignments to purchase a $200 worth of clothes to return to school in the fall. There were rules agreed upon prior to the commencement of the program. Violation of these rules would also result in a fine. This part of the collective bargaining teaching strategy. As a poor kid in the South, I did a lot of shoplifting to get my school clothes. I recall falsifying an application in a speaker catalog to get an outfit to go to the prom. Even a rental was out of reach for me. I had lessons that I did not wish to pass on to others. My action held a purpose to prevent similar manifestations in the life of another young black male. The play helped increase my profile, presented me with a greater avenue to serve and be creative. The play had been written, but the life story was only taking on a new directive and fresh dimension. Many unseen hurdles were mounted on the horizon as everyone did not share in the emerging high profile coming my way. I missed a key lesson during this time. I was protecting my head from a high visible blow, while a lot of snipping at my ankles went ignored. Failure to pay attention to small details served as a major undoing. I marched head up into a forest of ankle biters. The play also served as a wonderful seed planting time for my daughter Brittany. This initiative planted the entrepreneur and creative spirit within her. She came to observe not only the performance, but became astutely aware of the merchandise being sold in connection with the production. Historical. Spread love everywhere you go. Let no one ever come to you without leaving happier. Mother Teresa. Another step beyond peers. When you have reached beyond your peers who do not wish to acknowledge you as their peer, you have brewed a tea that few wish to drink. In spite of the displays of non-cooperative moves, I kept my pursuit of positioning myself to render service among the people within the community. Did I ruffle feathers of current leaders? Yes. Did I mind? No. Was I coming off as selfish and arrogant? Well, that depends on who gets included in the conversation. One young lady asked me, how can you do so much on your own when our large congregation does so little? A community activist once stated, Reverend O does stuff, but he always liked to do it by himself. He does not like to work with already established organizations. The question by the young lady held some validity and was probably to some degree accurate. The statements by the activists were close to being accurate as well. My response to each would have resulted in less favorable thoughts about me by some leaders in other closed chambers. Being a pioneer takes on a persona of more than a notion. One has to saddle the reins of life and have the preparedness to rise or fall with each action. The higher your perch, the more those who oppose you can have a visual lock on your movement. It became imperative in my mind to find ways to address the needs of the people and worry none about what designated leaders thought of my methodology. The foremost objective on my agenda was to overcome my past and generate a person of character. In the revealing of the person I had become, I labored on all fronts from a position of love and not from a goal of being accepted by a closed group of elite power-seeking individuals. Choosing a non-conventional approach to solving the disunity among the people trumped any display of false unity in an effort to join gatekeepers whose task was to retain the status quo. Could I have been more tactfully? Possibly. Would tactfulness have been helpful in securing a closer embrace by the people who I did not really wish to engage? Probably. Whatever the outcomes or the consequences, I had chosen the path that best suited my intent of delivering positive experiences that were of aid and assistance to the people. It was my choice to seek an avenue to present help directly to the people without any camouflage agenda. Social Black experience. Defining myself as opposed to being defined by others is one of the most difficult challenges I've faced. Carol Mosley Braun. Experiences that change race relations. The closest that I could self-define would simply be stated as authentic Mark. Errors or mistakes, I would always come across as an authentic version of myself. Changed behaviors, adjusted attitudes, and clearer thinking always contributed to my being able to grasp the bigger picture without losing sight of the little people who eventually compile the multitude. Growing up in rural and segregated eastern North Carolina, survival often meant an informal education in how to survive the vicious racist system of my youth, the 1950s and 1960s. The many known heroes and heroines who waged war during numerous battles in order for Blacks to obtain civil rights in America are often omitted from the framework of history. My first such experience with such a noted hero was my mother's nephew, my first cousin. Cousin Fred Suggs was much older than me, a pioneer and courageous oddity in the 1950s and 1960s. He was a sharecropper in a small rural community who, under the injustice practices throughout the nation, chose a course counter to the apartheid system in place. Cousin Fred and his family had to move off a farm as a sharecropper family because he was a field recruiter for the NAACP. This was during a period when the NAACP had great prestige and caused much alarm to the bigoted system that was entrenched without fear in most American institutions. The knowledge of his hard sell to many of his peers taught me a valuable lesson that I filed away. I overheard him make his pitch to grown folk, his peers, who had no intention of being recognized or associated with him, or his desire to help them and all oppressed people gain some degree of liberation. Listening to adults talk among themselves was fascinating, especially when sensitive subjects were discussed. You had to be able to listen between the lines and decipher the allegorical context and metaphorical content. Most of the time, I placed the saying and illustration in my mental file cabinet. The part I did not get during the civil rights movement and justice conversation was the overt exclusion of the economic conversation. My youth was spent in poverty. Integration was the firebrand discussion. It became, in far too many instances, a life or death instance. For my personal psyche, it was the lack of material essentials that tilted my thoughts to economics. My earliest reflection into the broader world was based upon my lack of things and who had possession of all things that I liked. It was obvious to me that race issues stood between my possessing and being able to distribute to my family and friends the things I felt certain would make them happy. Each individual has a starring role in their own life, whether it's played out on a small corner of the world or before a world audience. No one can play your part better than you. I was a late boomer. I was a late bloomer in the race relations play. Each time that I addressed the part of authentic Mark, I became more aware of a changing world about me. My stability in my role kept my buoyancy. Sometimes I did not see the need to change. Other times I could not find it within me to change. Still, other episodes, fear and reluctance, were given too big a spotlight. Theological. Even a child is known by his acts, whether or not what he does is pure and right. Proverbs chapter 20, verse 11, Amplified Bible Classic Edition. Evangelism and social studies. The great theological debate of my life did not grow out of my first call of raising a question in Sunday school class for which Deacon Dunn did not have the answer. The great theological debate for me was not resolved when I was ordained a minister on December the 1st, 1984. My personal theological challenge and debate was ingrained in me through life experiences and personal reflection. By the observance of seasoned saints and viewing the defiant radical, the faithful, and the unbeliever. Two significant theological questions have haunted me in the most challenging moments of life. These two questions appear when I least wish to entertain them. Who has the most power, God or white men? Can God supply a black man with money? The obvious faith-based theological answer is a responding yes to both questions. However, the very nature of situation will bring the question to mind again and again. Someone without my upbringing and unique life experiences may wonder why those questions even arise. Trying circumstances can challenge our very faith to the core. The battle is not whether questions should or will surface. Winning the war with a yes affirmation in the midst of difficulty remains the same important outcome. I have faced less than ideal conditions on numerous occasions. Handling the questions under internal turmoil will determine what one can continue to provide as a pillar of faith. It is not the rote response that determines the most vigilant expressions of faith. Social consciousness has always played a key role in my assessments of the question. Unrest and upheaval set a scenario that often shares consideration. Sociology and theology do not have to merge to operate in a parallel universe. Mobility of faith and the interaction of social existence will also mesh in a world that demands answers and positive action. The deciphering of how each scene unfolds will determine the fluidity of one's responses to a circumstance, condition, or situation. The manner in which one's witness is received will further dictate the impact how another individual absorbs my message. Evangelism and social concerns will also form the basis of a conversation that commands strategy, which results in a direct action. The effectiveness of one will reflect the work of the other. I walk hand in hand with evangelism and social concerns. For me, there is no real separation between the two. In order for me to be an effective evangelist, I must reach out to the social needs of the people. Should there ever emerge a need for my evangelism and social concern footprint, may the image depicted portray my actions and teachings in concert.